I'm Caitlin Smith. I'm a delivery lead at Equal Experts, and I'm working with Sarah Ravenhill.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a career civil servant. I've been doing tech digital transformations for government for over 20 years. Yes, I do all of that.
Okay, so hopefully you're all in the right room. Today we're going to talk about a case study with HMPO, to the Passport Office in the UK. Before we get started, with a raise of hands, how many people have a valid passport right now? Okay, how many people have a British valid passport right now? How many people have renewed or got a new passport in the last 5 years? Okay, so hopefully those people who raised your hands have gone and experienced the kind of new transformation digital service at HMPO. And today we're going to talk all about how we did it, what it is, how we approached it. So we have one product. This is our product, the British passport. We have 50 million British passports in circulation around the world. We process in the system 7 million applications per year. There are 6 different types of citizenships. That's British overseas, British UK passports. So there are different types of citizenships. We have 7 regional offices all across the UK, and that's where passports are processed. We have 3,000 caseworkers, so 3,000 users that use our internal service. On our team, which looks after the processing of applications, we have 100 digital service staff. About 8 years ago, the Passport Office set off to transform the way that passports were processed. So this is not only the digital service, but this is the buildings, this is how they sent to print. They had one supplier that was doing all of that. The transformation was not only to go digital, but it was to break this down and have multiple suppliers across the service, reducing that single risk. And it was really about transforming the way that the customer would apply for that passport and that experience, but also the time and the processing, looking at automation, looking at digital services, looking at moving away from spreadsheets that were kind of for each regional office. How could they centralize that? So we're going to talk to you today about this journey, and we've tried to simplify it and break it down and some of our learnings.
So, yeah, we're not just here to share the misery. We hope, even though they do say don't work in places with more than 12 projects and don't use Agile to replace legacy systems, there are bits in here you find that you might apply in your own worlds, or bits where you go, really, that was a bad idea and I'm never going to copy that. I mean, all of this is valid learning. We just want to share the story. In retrospect, there were 4 phases. You never recognise these things at the time, but looking back, they're there. From the very beginnings, printing the first passport, working out what the minimum product was, through the foundation building to scaling up, and where we are now, the long tail, which feels right now like the hardest part. So we'll talk about each of those in turn, share some of the things we learned and some of the ways we adapted what we did. Okay, and because it's 8 years, and if I asked you to listen to all of that, you'd be here until tomorrow, we've chosen to highlight 2 aspects. Now, if you recognise the kind of grid on the left there, you will know just how geeky my hobbies are. This is an alignment grid. So it's sort of how much you like rules, running from not at all on the right to very much on the left, and how much you really like other people, from not at all to quite a lot at the top. When we came into the organisation as a new team, they thought we were absolutely chaotic evil. We were out to get everybody. We weren't going to follow any rules. We were going to be absolutely terrible for everybody. We are now neutral good. I'm not going to say lawful good, because I'm not here to follow the rules. Rules should be challenged when they're inappropriate, okay? So that's there. And on the right, that is not the artwork you get in your hotel room. That is our microservices. The dark ones at the bottom there were the first 3 we ever had, and we're now up to over 50. It's just a way of saying this is the kind of technical steps we want to talk about as we're going through. Okay, and this is where we started. There is a tiny picture over there. It's a tiny picture because it's from 2016, and we didn't have very many megapixels on cameras in 2016. It's about as big as I can stretch it. That is a backlog of forms to be processed. This is the system we started in. It's all very paper-driven. There were people whose jobs it was to push those trolleys around the organisation. If you did not have a paper form in your hand, you could not access the casework in the caseworking system to process that form. So there were people who would go up to those trolleys, have a look through the forms, and go, "Oh, don't like that one, put that box back." Get another box out, and they do whatever they felt like. There are obviously people alongside that are really, really diligent, and they will go through everything and do their jobs well, but they were the cherry pickers. There were also, as Kate said, people whose jobs it was to compile spreadsheets about what was happening at different times and if you were meeting targets. So all this was going on. It took an awful lot of processing. The case working was not engaging, very, very heavily prescribed, very repetitive, and not very tailored. So this is the world we started out in. And, okay, before I go much further, I should explain some of the colours. We hate bullets on slides, so we've gone for something just a little snazzier. Purple box is talking about the tech. Green box is really talking about that trust, moving up that grid. Can't really tell the difference between blue and black on here, but blue is where we've got some data or some evidence behind things. Black is just a number, okay? So, this is our first phase. This is me arriving in the organisation, fresh and new, with my new chaotic evil team. And they decided that the first thing we should do is prove that we could actually build things, that we were actually developers and IT people. We should build a tech stack proof of concept. We did that. It was nice and small. There were no users. It was great. It earned our first kernel of trust. It got some funding. And it actually reduced quite a lot of risk for the project because they were proposing that we do things with technology that we did not like. And we proved a different stack would work. Lovely first step. But then we had to build things they were going to use. And the chaotic evil bit came back. You don't plan. You don't document. You're irresponsible. Oh, great. Right, we'll give you the Scrum stuff. This stuff over here you can go and get certified in. We're definitely going to be doing things in a certain rhythm for you. We'll be planning every 2 weeks. Isn't that nice? And you'll be able to see some outcomes, and we'll show you every 2 weeks what we're doing. So that was a great starting point. I think it works for quite a lot of teams in industry. If you, as a team, don't know what you're doing, Scrum is great. If your organisation really doesn't know much about Agile yet, but your team is really experienced, it's still a great starting point because it builds that trust. So we took this Scrum method and we said, we are going to try and work out, out of all those citizenship types, out of all the different circumstances you could be applying in, what is the simplest thing we can do to put our system live? Now, there are 4 policy frameworks in HMPO. There are 3 different sets of business logic. There are lots and lots of guidances and processes. You can actually look them up on the internet. We make our caseworker guidance live, public. And we struggled with all this for quite a while. And what we ended up doing was making a giant spreadsheet. And that gave us the first simplest thing we could do. We then worked out, because this was all too big to do in one go, we need to be able to iterate through things. And we invested about 9 months in connecting our new shiny steel thread up to our old system. So anything the new system couldn't do, you could push off safely to somewhere else and it would still be processed. It's really, really important for us. Now, we thought this was probably a 3 or 4 year process. It's turned out to be 8 years. That's probably the best investment of my career, at dual running for legacy replacement. We got ready to put this live, and the business said, still don't trust you? Do 45,000 comparisons between the old system and the new system. It's about 1% of the stuff that comes in a year. That's where the figure comes from. So I sat there with a spreadsheet of 45,000 test results going, yeah, is that the same as that? Oh, my God. But yes, that did work. And I went, that's great. Now, when you've got your system live, we're going to randomly sample what it's doing and seeing if it's still doing the thing your test said it would do. But I haven't changed the system. Yeah, we're still going to sample it. Okay, fine. Well, we went back to what our team was sneakily doing in the background behind all that nice, safe Scrum things. We'd put in a continuous integration and deployment system. So you could not get things from our developers through to live without doing a whole load of automated tests. And that meant that our users, our approvers, our governance could see this test suite, could not get things out the door without that having been passed. And we managed to stop them doing a manual sampling of something that was unchanged week in, week out. So that was lovely. We printed a passport. And we smudged it. If you pick things up too fast off the printer, yeah. So that was an auspicious start. That was lovely. This is phase 2. The lovely people in governance said, great, you've printed a passport. You've got a whole year to do the rest of this system. My God, the old system took 5 years to build. 5 years. You've got a year to do the rest of this. This comes out of government planning cycles. I don't know if you've heard of spending reviews. You get a 4-year planning cycle. Tell us in detail what you will be doing in 4 years' time, how much it will cost, and how many people will be in your team. Are you going to get that right? Probably not. So it's a whole load of investment decisions made without insight. And we butted up against this as a team. So if you possibly can, when you're doing your planning for your projects, plan some iterations and points at which to check your budget and your plan. We hit up against that waterfall approach to funding. So we said, no, that's not going to take us a year, that's going to take us a few more. And they wanted to know why. So what we did was resort to extreme delivery transparency. Let them into JIRA, did a load of story mapping, introduced the organisation to the idea of a service map. Everything end to end is there for the journeys. All the tech supporting it is underneath. All this stuff. They got absolutely fed up with the detail, but they did trust we knew what we were doing by the end. It was worthwhile. And at this point, I had to let users touch my system. I don't like this. Didn't like that at all. There's a lot of user journeys. Most of what we've actually built is user functionality. We had, up until now, built just enough to check that one passport print was going to be okay and it met all the rules. But now there needs to be people in there. They need to see documents, completely digitized documents, none of this hand-holding stuff. They need to be able to send emails, text messages, run through all the checks that you need to build, see all the results, lots and lots and lots of functions. And we had this really, really slow feedback cycle. This was all going through traditional governance. So we did this radical thing for government. I don't think it's radical anywhere else. Pilot user groups. Pilot user groups are essential. If you can get one of these in government, grab it with both hands. Really do. We got actual users sat with our actual developers giving us immediate feedback about how well something was working and what they need to do the next task. That was beautiful. I felt like a god doing that. The people in governance said at this point, we still needed to speed up. So we've sped up the feedback cycle with the pilot user group. We've expanded our teams, because it's always, can you throw more people at that? At this point, we stopped using Scrum, because that really didn't work across 4 or 5 different teams. We were using Kanban now. And we had a look at optimizing approvals. This felt like a secret sauce. So if you're in government, and I think you've probably heard throughout the day, if you're regulated, if you have auditors, if you're dealing even with security, you're going to end up with a point in that cycle where you've got to give it to somebody else to approve. And that can take ages. They're not invested in your result, they're just gatekeeping. Teams work best when they have autonomy. So we changed our definition of team. Anybody who had to approve our stuff became part of our team. They came and worked with us every day. We built up the trust with them, and they became invested in the results. We shifted a lot of things left. Really, really good thing to do. At the end of these 2 years, we had a load of users, we had a load of support processes, and we had 2 million passports. And I got a sticker.
Okay, so we built out our foundation, so our steel thread. We started to build the features in. So we now needed to look at how did we scale that. So how do we scale this both technically and from a user base? So I think at the end of the first phase, there were a couple hundred users.
Yeah, a couple hundred.
And we're looking at, we need to ramp up to 3,000. So we needed to prove it at scale. So as a part of this, we needed to look at how did we bring those users on and how did we kind of work with them for new features? So how were we going to take them on the journey? Because remember, we have the old system running and we're building out the new system and it doesn't have all the features yet. So we needed to kind of work with them to show them the changes that were coming. We at HMPO have embedded our business change team within our actual delivery team. So they work side by side from kind of the prioritization of features right through to delivery. So they work with the engineers, they work with the product owners, but they then go and work with the users themselves. So looking at the training, looking at guidance material. They do a lot of heavy lifting when you think of 3,000 users we're trying to take on the journey for new features. So it's really a partnership. In some organizations, you have product and business change, and there's kind of a bit of a friction there, but they work together in partnership. And so we're at this point trying to convince more users to come onto the service, but they want to keep using the old service. And then COVID happened. And as a part of this, it was both a blessing and a curse. What happened with COVID is the new system had a concept of a national queue. So in the old system, all the kind of prioritization was done at the physical site. So the only way for them to be able to work remotely was to use the new system. So they had to migrate. So it was a bit of a force, but it brought on a huge amount of challenges. Once we got everybody on the system as a part of COVID, we then needed to look at how do we prioritize, because we had more users. They were like, we want more features, we want to go faster, but we had to do it in a really controlled way. So we used data as a part of that. So as a part of the old system, we know the reasons why kind of the journeys that were happening. We call it a return to legacy. So an application will come in, it will come into the new service. If we couldn't handle that application, it would then go to the old service. And we call that a return to legacy. So we looked at the numbers of that, and the highest ones based on kind of stakeholders, numbers would be how we prioritize the features coming in. And so that allowed us, having that data and showing that to the stakeholders, allowed them to understand the prioritization. By the end of this kind of phase, there was 7 million passports printed. So, long tail, which is where we are at this point. So first of all, it is about the whole change in the way the examiners worked. So they were starting to go, we understand we don't need to prioritize anymore. The system is doing that prioritization. So there's a change on how they do workforce planning. They can use the data to be able to give them those insights to manage that. But because we're at the long tail, there's contract dates and key factors as to why we need to get to a specific date to turn off the old system. We need to have robust change control as a part of that, which kind of goes against everything with Agile. You don't want those kind of rigorous structures. But in order to see the kind of ROI, we have to have a point in time. We have to kind of have those safeguards. The point we're at is all the edge cases. So we have 98% of applications are now going through the new system, but the last 2% are hard. These are applications that we don't get frequently, and if we do, they're complex. So we're working, we decided, based kind of back at the beginning, where they brought in this concept of a digital design suite. So it was this pilot group. That kind of got dissolved during COVID just because of the location side, like space and everything. But we decided to bring it back. So we're working with policy, with our users to look at each of these different cases. Does it need a technology solution, or is it a business process? Is it a policy change? So we're trying to look at it differently and then feed in the engineering team is a part of that. So they have really quick cycles on how they're working away on these kind of edge cases and corner cases. And then by the end of this, at the moment, we're at 23 million passports printed. We still have a bit to go, percentage-wise. But we know we don't want to be running both systems because the cost of running the old system, it's just too much.
And this is a sample of what we've produced. This is where we are now. So we're an award-winning service, and actually we need to update the slide because there's a few more to tack on the bottom there. Show off a little bit. Very proud of those. We are basically more automated than we have ever been. So we automate all the routine tasks. people working on the system only see the tasks they need to do. So see on the right-hand screen there, that's their task list. They're almost entirely directed, so they don't need to think about very much anymore, just the immediate thing in front of them. Things are completely digital, so they can work anywhere in the country, which is fabulous. We are policy compliant. We are very, very ethically driven, so at no point does the system say no. Caseworkers are always looking at extenuating circumstances. And we are very, very user-focused. And the result of that user focus is all this time saving. So what we've got here is for domestic passport applications, so just the UK ones. This is a sample of the time taken in the old system, that's the red dots, and the time taken in the new system, which are the blue dots. These are average times. This will vary. Even the 2-minute saving in the bottom there is a significant saving, because that's over half of the passport applications we deal with, the adult renewals. A lot of you were doing that this year or within the last 5 years. So really what we're saying with this slide is the new system goes zoom. And yes, it does. It really, really does. It's been a fabulous thing.
For us, this is a success. About 8 years ago, HMPO was in the press for all the wrong reasons. They now have a system that is great for working remotely. It's great for the users in terms of the optimizations, but it's also great for the customer. So in terms of the applying for the passport, the speed, the communications, and they're continuously improving it. It's a product. It's not a project, which is fantastic that they've shifted that mindset as an organization. We have a huge success in terms of 98% of the passports are already in the new system. That's a huge success. 60% of the casework is automated, and to date, nearly half of the passports ever being in circulation, we have printed through the new system. The other fantastic thing, Sarah talked about the foundations that they built from the beginning. That has been fundamental to all of this. We do, on average, 2,500 deployments a year. So when we have an incident, we're able to look at our DORA metrics and go, we have only had 4 P1s, 1 P2, but look at the scale of the deployments and the features that we're releasing, which means it helps us with the organization to not react to an incident on putting more change control in, but having a real learning mindset. So in conclusion, we wanted to kind of give these takeaways to everyone here about what we've learned on this journey. So the first one, as I just mentioned, spend that time in the beginning, put in those foundations, and do it well, because it'll set you up for future success. Evolve your working practices. As Sarah said, the organization in the beginning, in their Agile journey, needed to have a little bit more structure, like Scrum, and you can evolve that as your teams mature. But it's all about that transparency and that trust. We have found that giving our stakeholders and our kind of wider subject matter experts the data allowed them to help be a part of making the decisions and the prioritization. They could see that we were focused on the top priority applications. And for us, you can't change user behavior with training alone. It's a journey. Having people like our business change managers working closely in the pilot groups, that's all helped us on the journey. So we want to thank you for listening to our journey. If you have any questions, please let us know.
We have one instant hand up.
Sorry. So you said 23 million passports printed now, but that's not the end. When can you turn off your system? What's the date that you're waiting for?
Right, we have to be able to process 100% of things. So that 2%, that last little bit, is the point that we can turn off our legacy system. I am so looking forward to that day. Anyone?
I had actually very similar, slightly different question. It's an amazing success story, and I'd definitely like to catch up afterwards and chat to you about it, because I think I might have been part of the team that implemented the legacy you just waiting to turn on.
Did it fit?
Yeah, like when is the product isn't done, right? You'll continue to evolve and write some service, but when is the project done? Is it done when you're not reliant on the legacy, or when you have actually switched it off?
So we're part of a wider programme. I think Kate showed the slide with over 100 projects on.
Yeah.
There are bits which aren't us. We're caseworking. There is a system of record behind all this. So ultimately, my details from when I was a kid are stuck in this database that I now administrate. I'm not allowed to change my date of birth. I'm very sad about that. That will need to be switched over. So we need a new prime system of record. And that forms the end of the programme. At that point, any reliance on those legacy systems are gone. So we're enabling part of that, but then is when the project as such is done.
I think just to add to that, I think that this team will get it to a certain point where all those applications are going to come into it. But it may have certain business processes that are the same as the old one, with maybe some spreadsheets, those things. It wouldn't be how we would naturally design it. But again, we're going to iterate on it. So it's do enough so it allows the business to make that fundamental shift. And then we'll iterate to make it better for our users.
I think I saw one in the back corner.
Yeah, I was wondering, when you rolled out wider to caseworkers, did you have any trust issues with them using the new system? Did they have options to sort of push it back into an old system?
Yeah, they did. They found them. We mentioned that to casework in the old system, you have paper in your hand. That includes all the supporting documents. So you're actively evaluating, is this thing official? Holding it up to the light, smelling it, touching it. And so even for the most basic stuff in this new system, because that's all digital on your screen, they didn't trust that at all. We had given them an emergency get-out facility. I can't do this. And it started out just being, we'll give you a free text box for you to tell us why, and that'll feed our development. They did that a fair bit. And the business change team have spent an awful long time working out what the options should be in that list so that we can quantify that a lot better. That was a challenge. It took us quite a while to get over that trust barrier. COVID was amazing. It went from, we're not sure we trust this, to, oh my God, I can work from home, I'm going to bite your hand off. That was a turning point.
I think one of the things we probably didn't emphasize, I think Sarah just touched on it, is that before everything was handled in person. So everybody had to have the documents. They used to look for, whether it was authentic. Now all the documents are digitized. So caseworkers can get those documents physically, but it's not the kind of first point.
At the back there?
Could you say a bit more about the, they said we want it in 1 year, and
Yes.
you said that can't be done. I
Yes.
feel like there's probably a whole presentation in there.
Oh God, yes.
Amazing. So anything else you can say about like your approach to that, your strategies, or work or different?
Right. Let's see. Really what we needed to do was demonstrate the sheer volume of stuff. At senior levels in government, there's a tendency to go, well, you're just issuing a passport, that's simple. And you will probably hear that about many, many projects. So if you can demonstrate and not hide how complex your problem is, and remembering as a product manager of sorts, my job is to make things simple for people. I had to undo all of that sort of ideology. Show them the mess, show them the work in progress. That was the big thing. One of the things we did was say, okay, you can see from your policies there are going to be over 100 tasks to do in this system. If we only take a week a task, that's over a year. So even if you're not giving them full estimation, show the complexity and get them to do some basic maths. That was the secret. But yes, I could entirely run a whole presentation on that. Okay, front.
What's been the impact to cost of transaction or cost of passport?
Most of the costs when you're paying for a passport are not for your passport. They are for the border force, they are for embassies and things like that. We have brought down the time it took for the average piece of caseworking, so the adult renewal, by about 2 minutes. So 2 minutes of somebody's wages are saved. That's being rechanneled into other services. So there's no loss of staff. They're doing more on visas where there are backlogs, or we're investing into the system. So little bits, not huge amounts yet. I can't say we're able to suddenly cut the cost of things, but if you look at the difference online between processing a paper app and processing a digital app, that's the sort of order of magnitude savings we're trying to give back to the public. Yep. Okay.
I've got a question.
Ooh.
Sorry. Are there any other, you just mentioned another department.
Yes.
Are any other departments looking at you guys and going, ooh, can we have some of that?
Yes. And other countries. Japan, Portugal, USA, Australia, New Zealand. I'm out of countries. But yes, other departments are looking at pieces of the way we do things. So the components, the approach to the pieces of casework we've automated. So DVSA, DVLA have come to us for bits of this. Other are coming for what we call a comms builder, so the way we structure letters, make it quicker and more consistent for examiners, caseworkers to send out stuff like that. So yes, we're sharing where we can. We're very happy to. Most of what we actually can share is config rather than coding, but yeah, we're happy to. We do try. Oh, yet everyone wants the beach road. No, we've got another question.
Can you push DVSA and DVLA to actually implement it?
Yes, they really want to. They're not. It's an open door there. They are definitely trying. Okay, if we have dried up. Oh no, good grief! I'm not used to this many questions. I love this. Could do more of this. Go ahead.
Just curious, the legacy system you had before, I'm assuming that was you paid some money to build it for you, and this new one is actually in-house?
Yeah, that's right. So the legacy system is part of, as Kate said, a giant everything contract. Desk phones, computers, networking, caseworking systems, HS, all of that in one contract. So where we can, all of this is in-house now. So yeah, I'm a civil servant from an in-house team, working with a much wider team, some of whom are civil servants as well, but it's all in-house managed and looked after. Means we can better meet the needs and evolve with the business, rather than having that check things over the wall kind of relationship with a large legacy supplier.
And it's not about criticizing that legacy supplier, because they built the right thing at the time. And they would probably be saying at this point that you need to rewrite it anyways. But it was just happened to be part of a wider contract restructure.
Go ahead.
Do you think that government is now better at Agile than the private sector?
Ooh. For funding reasons, probably not. And if you'd asked me that probably 3 or 4 years ago, I would have gone, no. I'm not sure now. I'm not sure. We're at least on a par.
I worked in broadcasting for about 15 years, and I'd say both at HMRC and HMPO, it's pretty, I was surprised how forward-thinking they are.
Can I give you a list of other government departments to go and talk to?
Yes. You're quite good. We do request.
So we are a part of the Home Office. So HMPO was brought into the Home Office 2014. So there is a lot of discussions between the groups. So hopefully learnings and sharing and
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
I'm interested in that key transition that you spoke about from moving towards product paradigm from project paradigm, and what were the key things with your senior stakeholders to convince them to make that transition?
So that came very early on. That's something I insisted on during foundation, which is really to say, when I'm finished, are you certain you will never want to make any more changes to this system? Do you want people who are going to know the inner workings of this to stay around for a while, to understand your business better and be working with you in partnership? And the answer was yes. Well then, you need a consistent team. That makes it sound so simple. That took about 6 months of argument, but that was the thrust of it. Yeah. Oh, we've got 2 over there. Front.
Yeah, can I ask what sort of, you might not know this off your head, but what is like, presumably your paper-based system would have an error rate in terms of, you know, if somebody submitted an application, they probably shouldn't have got a passport, but maybe they got one if they got lucky. Do you have an error rate, and what is your acceptable error rate, and did you bring that down as a result of going digital?
So, no, there is not an acceptable error rate. My colleagues in public protection would kill me for ever suggesting there was such a thing, which I guess you can understand. Did we make caseworker action more consistent? Yes. And we can see that in the increase of the number of things referred to the public protection people. They may send quite a lot back the other way and go, we're not interested, that's not fraudulent. But yes, things are following policy better, I guess is the answer I'm able to give to that one. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I want to ask is the benefits in terms of the scaling, which Agile has been able to deliver to passport holders. You know, from printing one passport to 2 million, 7 million, and 23 million.
Yeah.
In terms of the benefit, does that really impact on the applicants who are applying for passport?
Right. We usually hear about pace. The pace of it does. So in 2014, you might have heard there were giant passport backlogs, and everything was very difficult to manage. There was a lot of negative press. People were waiting months. When it got back to regular operation, people were waiting 3 weeks. People are getting passports in 2 days now, on the standard service, not on the fast track. So the speed and the amount of communication, so that you understand what's going on with your application as you go through, these are the benefits we see giving to the public.
In terms of the cost, I mean, scaling, going higher, for example, at scale should have bring down the cost of application, I think. Because
yes.
What it costs you to produce 7 million, one can achieve 23 million at scale, that should have bring a cost benefit to the applicant.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was the difference I mentioned earlier between applying on paper and not having all this automation, and applying digitally and having a cheaper price. So yes, it has. We passed it on where we can.
Yeah.
It's not a very satisfactory answer, I know. It's like, we want to hear that you saved 18 million for it. No,
Yeah.
I can't give you that money. I wish I could.
This is kind of related but unrelated. Just so people are aware, we had a big scaling challenge after COVID. So we had a number of years where people were not renewing their passports, and it changed the whole traffic and consumer patterns. And they, HMPO has cycles of the year where they have higher peaks, and that compounded with this peak from COVID, brought a whole new challenge. So while trying to deliver the features of the new system, the team was also trying to support a huge scaling challenge while supporting running a live service. Because if we do have a P1, it is very public. So I think it's, you know, the way they've architected, or we've architected the system, has really supported that, to be able to scale, to be able to have the circuit breakers in place, be resilient.
Okay, how are we doing? There?
When moving away from the legacy system, did you experience the mindset of like stakeholders, or I want this really specific feature on the legacy system, but better? And if so, how did you kind of get them to think about this new product as a new product in its entirety, and not kind of be limited by the legacy system?
Always to go back to, what are you trying to achieve? I've had a number of, can you put this warning up on screen? I'm like, yes, but people are just going to click OK and ignore it, and it will disappear. What do you actually want to do? In a number of cases, they could think of no reason why they actually needed that feature. It's just, I've always had it. Well, yeah. So that's it. Go back to outcomes. What's the goal?
What was the biggest risk related to doing it digitally? Well, I'm thinking, to get into a building to pick up someone's paperwork is hard.
Yeah.
It's now digital.
Yes.
Did that cause any problems?
Yeah, challenges, legal challenges, like you're not going to have a wet signature on your form now. That took a long time to get over. People perceive that as a big risk. The other one is making sure that you get the right documents to support the application. And with a family group, where you've got more than one applications documents in a set, making sure they all go with the right thing. So making sure the backup evidence is there where you need it, I guess. Okay, just
Yeah.
have I covered? Yeah, okay.
I mean, there's lots of other complexities, as
There
you
is.
would know as well, yeah.
But most of them don't stem from going digital, they just stem from any
Yeah.
system like for like replacement. Okay. Any more for any more? Oh, thank you, that was a lovely load of questions.